Hello and welcome to News Express, exclusively brought to you by Business AM, Nigeria's fastest growing financial and business newspaper. I am Chukunonso Modi. Now let's take a look at the stories hitting the front page this week. Now the big one, Nigerians living in economic doomsdays amid rising prices. And sub-headlines, Nigerians in teeth-gnashing mode. Cost of utilities blow through the roof. LPG electricity tariffs meters new hangman, and FG planning more increases as fiscal burden rises. Another one hitting front page, $136 million made available at COP26 to Nigeria, others for sustainable energy. Sub-headlines, AfDB sealed support from multilateral agencies, foreign governments. Africa's 600 million live without electricity, majority in Nigeria. Now, other ones, you should also check out Finance and Investment with UBA Access Top Analyst Picks. You should also look at Energy Power Renewable 30-year master plan for power. Here, the Nigerian government, it talked about Nigerian government needing to prepare and implement a credible 30-year long-term master plan for power. Something you should check out for too is Executive Knowledge Series with innovation in everyone's business, visionary voices with the economy that planetary health requires, and the likes. Let's bring in Philip Isakba, the publisher, Business AM, to help us make sense of the headlines. Good morning, Philip.
Yeah, good morning. How are you doing today?
Fine, thank you, Philip. So now, let's look at this one. Nigerians living in economic doomsday amid rising price. Now, there is a lot of economic hardship the average Nigerian citizen is facing presently, from the rising household utility prices that analysts had long predicted would befall the country's economy, to the new higher cost of single-phase and three-phase electricity meters, which will kick in starting today, to the price hike jackpots in the form of a more than 200% rise in the price of liquefied petroleum gas, amidst other things. How did we get here, Mr. Philip? What would you say is the cause of this? I mean, for a country that is regarded as the African nation with rich reserves of gas especially, this is not a good thing for us.
Yeah, a lot of things have been happening in the last, say, couple of years, or maybe 3, 4, 5. You can take it to the last 6 years, since 2015. Of course, we went into recession in 2016, and we snapped out of that recession, and then so many things have been happening. But specifically, last year you had the problem of COVID, where global economy was down, and Nigeria was greatly affected in terms of revenue. Its major exports, crude oil, there was nothing happening generally, because of the lockdown, But what we have going on right now is that we are beginning to see the data, on citizens, and this is what this has been predicted sometime in the past by analysts who were following the situation.
Okay.
But there are some things that are not adding up, LPG, and that's because of policy misplacements. You have a lot of gas, but you are importing LPG, which is rather strange, Again, just like we have in the petroleum sector, fuel, to the country, despite the fact that we have 4 refineries working. Everybody's waiting for the refineries that Dangote is building to come on stream before we say hooray, But it is the fact that cost is now getting to hit everybody, and then the government seems not to be helping, in the sense that we just had this news coming at what is starting today in terms of the meters that have to install in their buildings to receive electricity. Recall that we've had this metering problem for a long time. First, it was that we privatized the electricity industry, or the electricity business, and then people needing prepaid meters were not getting prepaid meters, and they were still having to go through the pains of what's called estimated billings, and people were really, really angry at that. There have been some 1 or 2 things that have been done, to try to see at that metering problem was reduced, by some form of what you call funding that has come from the Central Bank of Nigeria, federal government pushing for that to happen. But you find that while we're talking about not getting meters, you haven't solved that problem. And the next thing has come on is that, well, if you're having a one-phase meter, you have to pay more. If you're having a three-phase meter, you have to pay more. So this is really hitting. First, you have a situation where policy would be huge, in terms of addressing big numbers, but now it is getting home. You haven't had meters, for a long time. A problem that should have been solved a long time ago, it wasn't solved. Now you are being told that, you have to pay more. And this is where costs of utilities, are beginning to hit the pockets of individuals, of citizens, especially those who cannot afford, these things. Electricity tariffs, you recall, electricity tariffs have gone up, and that, there were some issues last year, when it was increased, and then they pulled it back, but it's back on, so you find a situation where individuals are now having their pockets hit, by rising costs of different things, especially with the issue of LPG. We are coming from the COP26 summit in Glasgow, Scotland, where everything is being done to try to reduce a greenhouse effect, and everybody's now being forced. If LPG has gone up the roof at for 200% or more, then you have people resorting to the use of other alternatives, including charcoal and firewood, which adds to the problem that they were trying to solve at COP26, and the global greenhouse, whatever is going on with that.
Okay. Now, speaking on this LPG, the federal government reintroduced value-added tax on cooking gas, and also in a bid to widen its tax base and expand revenue sources, it had taken to imposing VAT on household cooking gas amidst its other plans to tax global tech companies and the likes. So the FG is planning more increases as the fiscal burden rises. Now, has this yielded positive result as expected? Has it helped in any way, or it's just not the solution?
What you're finding is that, of course, revenues have shrunk massively, for the federal government, and they are looking at everything possible to try to ramp up revenue, and that's what you're finding. So VAT was increased, you recall, to 7.5%, at the beginning of this year, and once that was done, government was delighted, because at the half point of the year, that's mid 2021, the revenue numbers from VAT, was really, really interesting, favorable to the government. So they have seen that so they're trying to push the boundaries, so to speak, in the sense that because they made a success of the increase of VAT, to 7.5% from 5%. They think they can still push that further, by applying VAT on different set of things. But the problem is that when you apply VAT on things that generally affect people, you're definitely going to have the news on citizens, and that is where you okay. So let's take it this way: you import LPG, right?
Yeah.
So you now impose. You have not been able to resolve your as largest as a country with a good what's it called, a reserve of gas. You've not been able to make gas available for your citizens, so there's resorts to, because of infrastructure problem anyway, so there's resorts to what's it called, to importation, and then you then slam a VAT on it. There are some things that are called essentials, in terms of the well-being of citizens, that you need to be careful about when you impose some taxes on. LPG will be one of them, because not only is it a move away from the use of coal and charcoal and firewood, but it's also the fact that it will touch the pockets of citizens, and which it has been doing since LPG prices started going up, So and then the government, of course, this succeed, with its VAT increase to 7.5%, and it thinks that it can succeed further by spreading that, Again, they talk about what's called, spreading widening the tax net,
Yes.
And one of the things to do that would be introduction of this stop thing like VAT, spreading VAT across different what's it called products, which they are still thinking about, because we understand that there's a plan to spread that, into different other items, For instance, agricultural food. I don't know how that will work. But there's also the fact that when the VAT crisis between the federal government and River State, or Federal Inland Revenue Service and River State, came up some time ago, there was the point made about food needed to be to be vatted, some kind of agricultural food needed to be vatted, so that every state can have its own share of good share of VAT revenue accretion, So that is the issue, that it is now hitting the pockets of people, and it's hitting really hard, and the burden is quite a lot.
Okay, I mean the burden is so much on Nigerians as well, and the fact that our minimum wage is even so low and prices keep increasing makes it even more difficult. So now, what can the government do? I mean, they're doing something, but it seems it's not working. What more can they do to stop this economic burden on Nigerians? What gap must they fill?
Well, it's between when government finds itself between the devil and the blue sea. This is where the government has found itself, because they haven't for say decades, some issues that ought to have been tackled. For instance, producing your own stuff to take care of your own needs. For instance, we talk about petrol. We talk about gas, for instance. Gas, not only in terms of industrial use, not only in terms of what's it called, LPG use, but also in terms of electricity generation. So a lot of issues haven't been dealt with. So those things need to be. I think there's need to do a 360 degrees turnaround. To say what are the issues that need to be cleared out of the way. So that we can move forward. In terms of dealing with some other issues that aren't related to the pockets or the economic impact on the masses or the people or citizens. So you have electricity. You have a petroleum issue, for instance, where of course you have subsidy that has been paid for years and even decades, on petroleum, the subsidies that have been paid on petroleum, which shouldn't be happening, because that has been a major depletion of the what's it called, the country's, for instance, forex reserve, because that's you spend a lot of foreign exchange importing what you ought to be producing in the country. Not only are you exporting jobs, not only are you depleting your reserves, but the fact that your refineries, aren't in proper shape, So of course it's going to take some time, but there has to be some serious commitment, to resolving the issues of the key issues that prevent, availability of some of these things, whether you're talking about electricity in generation in such a quantity that solves a lot of problems, or you're talking about gas, harnessing gas to ensure that LPG is produced, and so on and so forth. You need to resolve a lot of issues, and that is very crucial, and that's what government will need to do, to be able to reduce the cushion. I don't know whether there's talk about some palliative, there's plan that what's it called, a fuel subsidy will be removed in 2022, by mid 2022, and then the finance minister is talking about some form of palliative, what they call transport palliative, to be paid into individuals' accounts. But the key thing is that I think the time has come, for there to be a serious discussion around some standard welfare situation, for the country. It's generally perhaps rich in terms of mineral resources, but it's generally in its what's called in its account balances. Nigeria is poor, it's not that rich, compared to some other countries, But because it has a large number of poor people, government needs to really sit down, and see how government and people can come together. I mean, when I say come together, there can be a relationship, in terms of the provision of welfare. There has been some selective welfare packages that have been put together, but they seem to undermine the largeness of the population. Here numbers that don't make sense in terms of when you compare to the number of people who are in the poverty bracket. So that's a big issue. So government, I believe, can't sit down, and talk about how a proper working welfare system can be put in place, that you don't need to know anybody before you have access to it. So long as you come to a particular threshold where poverty is seen, you're seen to be poor, some kind of what government should give back to its people. That's the point I'm trying to make.
Okay. Yes, government really needs to find solution to this, because it's really eating deep into the economy. Now, looking at a second headline is $136 million made available at COP26 to Nigeria, others for sustainable energy. Now, as COP26 rounded up over the weekend, Nigeria and other member countries who are shareholders of the African are to benefit from $136 million in additional donor commitment for the Sustainable Energy Fund for Africa. Now, this is great news, Mr. Philip. What opportunities will this bring to Africa?
The energy crisis has been one, that the African Development Bank seems to have been making a serious push on for quite some time. There's been a lot of things that the additional presidency has pushed forward, with regards to the energy crisis in Africa. Energy crisis, particularly in terms of electricity. You see the numbers there. Africa's 600 million people. We're talking about a continent that is estimated to be 1.3 billion, and you have 600 million of that, of that number living without electricity. And then Nigeria, with its population, the largest in Africa, majority of this number, is in Nigeria. So the African Development Bank has been coming up with different things, to try to see how they can push into the continent with regards to power energy situation. One of which is the sustainability, sustainable energy using renewables and the land roots, which has been deferred for some time now, is one area that they've been trying to make a push on, and so this sustainable energy fund for Africa was set up by in collaboration with some donor countries, and so at the COP meetings, the AfDB, the president additional did meet, did hold some meeting, and then they had additional commitment. It has been on for some time, so they have made some, there had been some money put in already, but what we're seeing now is that there's $136 million additional additional commitment that was made during the meeting in Glasgow, Scotland. And what they will do with this is to continue to make that push to ensure that this number is reduced. There's a number of people, 600 million people who live without electricity, to try to make electricity available to people, and most of it will be through renewable, through renewable. So it's a question, a thing about access. Some of these funds, some of these projects will be in Nigeria. We have the rural electrification project or program. Perhaps some of the money will go in through that. Come to the country through that channel. But there will be some project that will be done in Nigeria, to try to extend access, to electricity, to some of these rural, mainly rural, semi-urban, urban areas of the country where access is lacking.
Okay. Now, like you said earlier, almost 600 million people living in Africa don't have access to electricity today. And even Nigeria, though AfDB's biggest continental equity holder and Africa's largest economy, also suffers the same thing. Now, what steps would you suggest that Africa should do to follow to close this energy gap?
I think there must be a broad-based approach to this problem. When you talk about access, you also talk about how much of electricity is being produced, and then the different sources, because one major thing is that sometimes they tend to look at the big things, when they are pursuing this energy challenge, So when you have this big thing, you want to build you want a project to be 500 megawatts or 600 or 1,000 megawatts before you start talking, and then when you get to that, you find that the funding is really an issue, So there have been different suggestions, for instance, what I see particularly in Nigeria, it's the lack of commitment or desire, to use the different sources available to Nigeria. For instance, solar energy, for instance, you can go back in time, if you were to do a head count, you'll find a number of projects, that were discussed, that used to make serious news. In Kano, there were projects in Kano, about some mega solar project that some private people and government were pursuing. That you don't hear about them anymore. They were all it appeared as if it was just for show. So you have solar, then you have what you call the hydro. For instance, before you go to hydro, you talk about gas being a problem. The fact that Nigeria cannot generate so much, it's not generating so much, is because there are issues regarding gas availability for that purpose. So you have hydro, so you have Kanji Dam, you have Shiroro and the rest. But people talk about a smaller of alternatives, that you don't need, that are supposed to be community-based. There are different waterfalls all over the place, that they believe that electricity can be generated. So you don't need a gigantic project, to be able to deliver on that. You just need to find a way, to make those projects bankable. Last week we highlighted the fact that there were a number of what's it called, hydro, small hydro projects that were bankable, or that put up as a list. But there isn't particularly commitment, So Africa is a sunshine, full of sunshine. So that's one. Solar can be a way to go. They talk about the cost being high, but over the years, cost has come down in terms of solar, what's it called, whether it's solar batteries or solar, the things you need to generate electricity through solar, So there's need to pursue that. There's need to be robust about it, in terms of what you are putting on the table, to try to make this happen. So you approach. So it should be a multifaceted approach to it, in terms of where the problem, different, what's it called, availability is, The other thing is that if you look at the case of Nigeria, not sure whether that also happens in different places. It's the issue of what you call the transmission company. You know, recall that privatization was done. You know, they have different legs of this different value chain in the electricity with that generation supply. You know, issue. You know, but government chose to hold. Up when it privatized generation and distribution, it chose to keep what's called transmission. You know, and many people have said this is not the right thing to do. You know, of course, government talks about security, talks about what's called national interest when it chose to not privatize transmission and kept it for itself. You know, but I believe that all those issues, whether we can be more in a terrible. I mean, I'm not talking about the security situation we face now, but we can be in a more terrible, in a more delicate situation a situation that economies that have that don't have transmission under the control of government. You know, you can't say that for the United Kingdom. You can't say that for the United States. You know, and so many other places. You know, because the country is such that it's a big country. You know, you cannot have one system. You know, just taking full charge. You know, of transmission, and transmission has been a major clog. You know, a cog in the wheel of progress. You know, so that I mean, that would be one area to look at. You know, and government to be steadfast and very serious about wanting to solve the power, energy situation of the country, and then Africa to look at all the sustainable means that they can use, you know, to get access to electricity, you know, to a wider group of citizens.
Yeah, okay. I do agree with you that government needs to be steadfast, because I feel that's one problem we have. We have everything, but we are not committed, and so we have issues at the end. All right, thank you, Mr. Philip, for joining us. We'll see how the stories develop this week.
Yeah, thank you very much. Take care.
That was Philip Isakba, the publisher, Business AM, Nigeria's fastest growing financial and business newspaper. That's all for now. Stay tuned for more.